Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. I need to show you a hilarious clip from a press conference today with Prime Minister Mark Carney, where it is clear he is not adjusting very well to his new elbows down lifestyle. Carney and the Liberals know the only reason they won the federal election back in April was because of the elbows up campaign. Canadian anti American sentiments were very high, and the Liberals were sleazy enough to exploit it in the way that they did, saying that our relationship with the Americans are over and we're going to go trade with Europe and Asia and we're just going to ignore the US. And it turns out reality eventually caught up with the Liberals, and now they need to be nice with US President Donald Trump and the Americans. And they know that one of their only big issues in the last election was how anti Trump they were. The other day on the show, we went over the top 9 issues according to Canadians in a recent Abacus data poll, and only 2 of the 9 polled better for the Liberals than they did for the Conservatives. Things like cost of living, crime, immigration, housing, even healthcare leans conservative either mildly or massively. On things like immigration and crime, the conservatives lead the liberals on who Canadians trust with it by 50 points. It's insane. The only thing the liberals had going for them were single issue anti Trump voters. But that issue is currently fading in its relevance, and now the liberals are basically having to put a bullet in its head by now bear hugging the US to try and repair the relationship that they had been messing up. And yes, did the Americans put tariffs on us, and was that bad? And should we be upset about it in some part, even though we already had tariffs on them with things like supply management? Maybe. But reality is, we need to trade with them, and they are a big ally of us. And the way the liberals were going about all this in the first couple of months of their government was completely ridiculous. We didn't end up signing a trade deal, and now we are running back to the table to try and do it because the Liberals don't want to look pathetic in Parliament when Mark Carney is being grilled by Pierre Poilievre in the House of Commons for having no deal. So, in a second here, I want to cut over to a clip of President Trump announcing that Canada is working closely with him on his new Golden Dome project, which again, we should be, but it's so weird that Carney is now doing this again after months and months and months of the elbows up, screw the Americans campaign. And then we're going to jump over to the clip of Carney being flustered by a reporter asking him about his flip flopping on the question of the United States. But before I get into it, I just want to remind you guys that if you like the show, make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are not yet a subscriber, and leave a comment on what you think. And then also in the description of this video below, as well as pinned at the top of the comments, I will be linking the We Unify Reclaiming Conference link if you want to buy a ticket. It's being hosted in Calgary at the BMO Center between September 19th and the 21st, and I will be there both on the floor around mingling with people, and I will also be sitting and speaking on some of their panels if you want to swing by and say hi. But now, without further ado, here is a clip of Donald Trump saying that it's great to have Canada on board for the Golden Dome.
In Huntsville, Space Com will play a key role in building the Golden Dome, as you know. That's going to be a big thing. Everybody wants to be a participant in it. Missile Defense Shield, we're going to be having a Golden Dome that the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. The finest, the best. And by the way, Canada called. They want to be a part of it, and that'll be great. But Canada wants very much to be included in that, and we're going to work something out with them, I hope.
And again, this is sensible policy for Mark Carney, but it's not sensible as he had been talking previously. He'd been asking, like, we need to make our own defense alliances and we need to take care of our own defense, and actually implying we may need to protect our borders from foreign incursions. He didn't directly say that, but at so many points, he had basically been talking as if Canada may need to arm up its military because maybe Trump will come to try and take Alberta from us or something like that. It was so hysterical. And when you looked at the liberal commentators online reacting to Carney, that's exactly the impression they got of the situation from his overhyping of the situation. That we're in danger because of the Americans and we need to split off from them, trade with other people. We need to not increase our defense spending, not because we should and the Americans have been flipping the bill for us for a long time, but we need to potentially protect ourselves against those same Americans who already protect us. But anyways, now we need to jump over. And the funny thing about that last clip is I saw liberals online, more lefty people saying, "Oh, Trump's lying. Carney would never have agreed to that. He's just making stuff up." Like, and then Carney's office had to confirm that no, we are trying to work with the Americans on the Golden Dome. And all these people like gobsmacked. She's like, why are you shocked? This is actually like a totally understandable position for the government to be taking if they hadn't been doing the stupid elbows up nonsense. But now here is Mark Carney, very much not liking a question from a reporter about his repeated flip-flopping.
When was the last time that you exchanged messages or you spoke to the U.S. president? And it's been 4 months that you've been texts,
He's like turning into a witch as we speak. He's like, change messages. What are you trying to imply there? He's just so mad about this being asked. Like, I love his face.
Or you spoke to the U.S. president, and it's been 4 months that you've been texts,
It sounds like you're my teacher and I've been caught.
Yeah, you have been caught. He's changed messages like 2 or 3 times at this point. Elbows up during the campaign, right after the campaign, bear hug in the Oval Office. Right after that, trying to normalize relations. Then he went back to elbows up, and then no trade deal signed. But it's okay because we don't even need a trade deal because we have USMCA already. Even though becoming compliant with the USMCA in order to avoid the tariffs actually still costs us more money, so that we're still having to pay increased costs regardless. And now we are back to bear hug. And by the way, bear hug is the right stance. But again, I am calling out the hypocrisy here that the people that put Carney into office expected not this. They expected quite the opposite of this. But let's get back to Carney getting mad about the question, trying to justify himself.
Or you spoke to the U.S. president, and it's been 4 months that you've been texts,
It sounds like you're my teacher and I've been caught.
And it's been 4 months since you've been in government. How much longer do Canadians have to wait to see results from those talks with the U.S. president?
Okay, well, let's go to results. Right now, we have the best trade deal of any country in the world. Okay, those are results. We're not weak thinking.
Those aren't results. Those pre-existed the situation. And saying we have the best trade deal with the United States is not shocking. We share a massive border with them. We produce a lot of raw resources that the United States wants, so naturally we trade a lot with them. The problem is that you are the guy who said that you knew how to deal with a man like Donald Trump. You've dealt with people like Donald Trump before, which was immediately a red flag because Donald Trump, whatever you think about the man, is a very unique person. There are not other people out there in the world like Donald Trump. And so him acting like, oh, no, I've dealt with people across the boardroom table like him before. No, you have not. And I think the record up to this point proves that you have not, because we have massive tariffs on our softwood, our steel, and aluminum, and we haven't actually signed a deal to get rid of the 35% tariffs on all the other non-USMCA compliant goods. If he was a good negotiator, he would have probably been able to put forward something saying that, hey, I know that you guys don't want people ripping you off and that you've been paying our defense bill. You know what? We will actually not just increase our defense spending to 2%, we'll do 5% preemptively. But we want to have a free trade relationship with you because really our two economies are really one economy based on how integrated they are. Maybe you have to make some extra concessions like getting rid of supply management. Maybe you have to make extra threats. But he didn't do anything. His entire trade strategy was completely comatose.
It can be better, and we're working to make it better. But to be absolutely clear, 85% of our trade with the United States is tariff-free. Nobody else is in that position. Our average tariff is about 5.5%. That's the lowest average tariff of any country.
Yeah, but for the companies having to pay 35%, the 15% who are not exempt, it is killer for them. And actually, it's even higher because they act like USMCA compliance means zero tariff. The thing is, I've said this before, it's a bit complicated, but previously before the 35% tariffs, if you were not USMCA compliant, the tariff was like 5-7%. It wasn't very high. But most companies didn't even bother becoming compliant, which should tell you that the cost of becoming compliant to those businesses who are sophisticated enough to probably be able to run the numbers and say how much would the extra paperwork cost, how much would the getting certain things sourced from different like countries cost, because you need products that were like 90% made in Canada, US and Mexico in order to avoid it and be compliant. Like they looked at that. They looked at all the standards and regulations and they said that I'd rather just pay an extra 5, 6, 7%. So it should tell you that the products that have now become USMCA compliant, because only about 34% of them were compliant in 2024. So now that 85, 90% are compliant now, it means that those companies are paying 5 to 7+% more in order for that compliance. But anyways, I'll let him keep talking. But it's ridiculous to say, oh no, our effective tariff's 5%. It's probably more like 8 or 9 or 10 because of the costs of becoming compliant. You can look it up. It costs quite a bit for companies to do the extra paperwork to source their labor and materials from different areas in order for the products to go over the border tariff-free
in the world. So right now we have the best, but we have real issues. Without question, we have real issues in steel, in aluminum, in forest products, in autos, potentially in pharma, copper, some other sectors. So there's these strategic sectors that the U.S. has focused on where we have issues. And as well, there will be a review of CUSMA, our trade agreement with the U.S. and Mexico, starting next year. So we need to prepare for that. We need to lay the groundwork for that review, and we need to address as rapidly as possible these strategic sectors.
Well, he keeps talking about how we're addressing it and we need to address it, but we haven't addressed it. That's the problem. We haven't seemingly been all that serious about it because we will not put things like supply management on the table. Supply management, as I've also said in other videos, is not even good for Canada because Alberta, with 12% of the population, gets 7% of the quota in order to produce, poultry and dairy products. That seems unfair even within Canada. So then why are we holding on to this with a death grip rather than trying to use it for leverage to have zero tariffs between Canada and the United States? It'd be good for both our countries. And in effect, Canadians would actually pay lower prices for things if we just got rid of supply management. Even if we didn't allow any dairy or poultry products in from the United States, just getting rid of that regulatory burden in our country and letting farmers produce whatever they want outside of a quota system, we would domestically already have cheaper dairy and poultry.
Okay. So that's the overall context. So we're looking now, given that we've got the best deal.
So we've established that we have the best deal, even though we have 80% of our trade with the United States. So in fact, this is not the best deal. If you look at it purely on paper, how much tariff we pay in effect, yeah, it's technically the best, but none of the countries paying more trade more than 80% with the United States. So he's just entirely wrong when he says specious things like that.
To really focus in on those strategic sectors and prepare the groundwork for that broader discussion on CUSMA. That's what we're doing. I last spoke, exchange messages. I last spoke to the...
He's still so mad about it. He's still seething about him changing messages because he did change messages, and it's like gnawing at the back of his head like a rat.
Exchange messages. I last spoke to the president Monday evening. I spoke at length on a wide range of issues, including on trade, but geopolitical, other issues, labor issues, etc. It was a good conversation. We have a team, a very senior team. The clerk of the Privy Council is there in Washington as we speak, that is meeting with the U.S. counterparts. Don't expect immediate white smoke on one of these strategic sectors, but that's the type of conversation that we're having.
So he's already telling us not to actually assume that anything's going to be getting done on steel, aluminum, or softwood lumber anytime soon. But the thing is, that's the problem with Carney. It's all talk. I think previously he wasn't still seething about the changing messages thing. He was seething about the exchanging messages thing with Donald Trump because he doesn't like it being said in the media that he's having this more direct, warmer relationship with Donald Trump, implied through the idea that they're exchanging messages in this casual way.
And will continue to have. as well, and this is a government that can do more than one thing at one time, as well as advancing those discussions in Europe and in Asia as we diversify our trade partners.
The problem is we're not really diversifying trade partners. We're losing lucrative trade with the United States, and we are trying to replace it with random countries in Europe and Asia who are not going to be paying us as much as the Americans would for our output, for our exports. This is why we need a deal fast. I would like to see white smoke on this stuff very fast, but we keep acting like it's ridiculous. It's unreasonable to expect him to actually do the things he said that he was going to do quickly. Carney, if you were watching the federal election, did you get the impression from what he was saying that he was going to move slowly and not get anything done in the year 2025? Or did you think that because he pitched himself as the man to lead us through a crisis, that he is going to get in there and he's going to break stuff to fix it back up, and he's going to get a deal on the table with the Americans within a month, and it's all going to be hunky-dory? We are now in the crisis management mode on this issue where, hey, it's not going to be white smoke. We're talking to them about this. We're still preparing for the CUSMA USMCA renegotiation next year. What? We're now preparing for something that's only going to start happening next year instead of trying to solve the real problem that is in front of us right now. We're going to solve the thing that we only start talking about next year and may not be fully renegotiated for another couple of years after that. But whatever, what do I know? I'm not Mark Carney, the genius economist, businessman, Goldman Sachs banker, central banker. But that should be it for me today, guys. Again, if you like the show, make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are not yet a subscriber, and leave a comment on what you think about the topic. Anyways, with that being said, see you guys all later.